Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. It's for Portal as well. And I want to go ahead and talk about each of them, what I think their status is and where they're going to end up. I guess there's a third, by the way. RJ Lewis would be the third, but who the heck knows what's going on with that guy? One guy I feel like we know a little bit about, PJ Haggerty, okay? So PJ Haggerty, if you're a college basketball fan, you obviously know who he is, but was a player at Memphis this past year, transferred in from Tulsa, was the AAC Player of the Year, 21.7 points per game. This dude was a bucket. And to his credit, sometimes, you're at Memphis, the competition in league play isn't that good. Say what you want for PJ Haggerty, but he had some of his best games, frankly, against some of the best competition that Memphis played over the course of the season. Finished the game in the out-of-conference against Mississippi State with 24 points. Virginia, 27 points. 27 in a loss to Auburn. 22 in a win over UConn in the Maui Invitational. Really good player. Right before the right before the transfer portal deadline, he announces that he is both testing the NBA draft waters, as I have something in my eye here, and then he is also putting his name in the transfer portal. What was interesting about the portal note was that the report that came out after it was that essentially PJ Haggerty, he's a very good player, third-team All-American, I think, according to the AP. But essentially, PJ Haggerty, this was the demand or request from his camp in terms of what it would take to get him to come back to college basketball. He wanted to be paid $4 million. I sound like Dr. Hill. $4 million. Want to get paid $4 million. That was what is believed to be the top of the NIL market. It's what we believe JT Toppin, the Big 12 Player of the Year, another All-American, got. But then also he wanted to have the ball in his hands and be a point guard. I said from the beginning, look, I think the money, he'll get paid, maybe not $4 million, but quite a bit. I actually thought the point guard thing was going to be a bigger issue because he's just not a point guard. Anyway, bring it up because he went to the NBA Combine last week, and I think there's an interesting thing going on. To his credit, he actually played very well. I'm just not sure it made all that much of a difference in terms of his NBA draft stock. In terms of how PJ Haggerty played, big game that he had. So he actually came off the bench in one of the games, but he was the most efficient player on the court. 18 points on 7 of 13 shooting, hit a three-pointer, and was 3 for 3 from the foul line. By the way, that's what he does best, is get to the foul line. And then on top of that, he also filled the stat sheet just like he did at Memphis, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. So he was actually very good. Now the issue becomes, I just don't know that it matters. He's 6'2", 6'3", score first kind of guy. It's just hard to find a role for a guy like that in the NBA. Listen, we're all watching to some degree the NBA playoffs. Outside of Jalen Brunson, how many guys are there that are 6'5" and under that are making a bunch of plays and the primary ball handlers? You think about these teams in the NBA now. Everybody's so big. It's almost like Duke, the team that Duke put on the floor by the end of the season. Everybody's 6'5", everybody's 6'6". The primary ball handlers are huge. Anthony Edwards is 6'4", 6'5". You go down the list, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 6'4", 6'5". So you don't need me to break down NBA depth charts right now. The point that I'm trying to make is that it's just hard to see a spot for him in the NBA. And it's worth noting, most credible mock drafts, even 2-round mock drafts, do not have him getting drafted. So at this point, it feels to me like he's coming back to college basketball. And I think we all feel pretty good about where he's going. I'm not breaking news. I'm not going to pretend that I'm giving you some insight that you haven't gotten elsewhere. But I do think Will Wade and the NC State Wolfpack should be considered favorites. Now, first of all, in terms of timing, it'll be interesting because even for a guy like PJ Haggerty, he's played 3 years of college basketball. I do wonder for a guy like that, and I think, Otega Owe could fall in the same kind of time frame, is I do wonder if a guy like that is going to sit there and say, you know what, even if I know I'm going to return to college basketball, let me go ahead and get a couple more workouts in just to meet people, get my name out there, whatever. So I think there's a possibility that it might not be right away that he withdraws from the draft, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that another one that happens pretty quickly, that he could withdraw from the draft any day now. I think it'll happen quick. Like I said, I think it's going to happen. When it does happen, it's going to be NC State. As I said with Boogie Flan, there's just not a lot of great options right now. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. If you're a UConn fan, if you're a Kentucky fan, if you're an Arkansas fan, your rosters are largely set. You don't need a lot of pieces. So NC State is the one that I still feel like it's almost like what I just said about Florida. I think Florida's got a very good roster. I think Florida needs that one dude to put them over the top, and I think it's the same with NC State. You look at who NC State has gotten committed so far, and again, much like the NBA, we're not breaking down depth charts here in the middle of May, but Trey Holloman, who's actually a point guard, comes in from Michigan State, averaged about 9 points per game. He was part of that Elite Eight team. Remember, Michigan State lost to Auburn in the Elite Eight, Big Ten regular season champs. He comes in from Michigan State. He is probably going to be the primary ball handler, but he's not a guy that takes over games, gets you 20, 25 a night, nothing like that. They also added Terrence Arsenault. I actually think a very, very, very nice player from Houston, who I think is going to be very good. But I think, again, by the way, the Paul Mbaya kid, I apologize if I mispronounced his name. That's the international kid that I think some people thought could have been drafted in the second round if he went pro, decides instead to come to college, and Will Wade, the closer, freaking closes him. So those are kind of the key pieces. I'll say this, too. There's actually two guys coming with Will Wade from McNeese State that started at the high major, transferred down to McNeese, and now have transferred back up that I think could have success with McNeese that I think we're or with NC State that we're probably just not talking about enough. The first is Kadir Copeland, who was a player that, again, began his career at Syracuse, He ends up going to McNeese, and he ends up being one of the best players that they have on that roster as part of that NCAA tournament team. He's yet another player that's probably the best with the ball in his hands. Was a double-figure scorer at Syracuse, led McNeese in assists with 4.5 per game. Then the other one is Alan Breed, who began his career at Providence, goes to McNeese, and now is following Will Wade. So the bottom line is, when I look at this NC State roster, I think if you add PJ Haggerty, all of a sudden, I believe that we are talking about a team that, in my opinion, very much is in the mix at the top of the ACC. Now, I don't know that you can say they're better than Louisville right now. By the way, Louisville just got another international kid that people are really high on. I'll try to look into that and maybe have that conversation later in the week. Also, Duke is going to be really high up there, but once you get past Duke and Louisville, if NC State adds PJ Haggerty, they are right in that conversation. And so we'll see what happens. I really like the roster that Will Wade put together. And I think, by the way, for PJ Haggerty, it makes a lot of sense too, because I think, Will Wade, kind of that new age coach, he's not a point guard, but I do think the ball will be in his hands. He'll be the secondary guy behind Trey Holloman. Really, they're going to play essentially with like 3 ball handlers, with Copeland, who transferred from McNeese, and of course, Trey Holloman as well. And then from PJ Haggerty's perspective, the ball is in your hands. You're going to get plenty of shots. You're going to be in the biggest stage in college basketball in the ACC. And the other thing is, I think it's easy to forget this right now. Will Wade's got a pretty good track record of putting guys into the pros. Like, it's easy to forget. Like, it is insane to me. You watch I don't watch a ton of NBA. You know that. But, like, there's so many guys that Will Wade coached in LSU that are playing in the NBA. Cam Thomas, he's a little bit of a bucket getter, but that dude puts up stats in the NBA. He played at LSU. Trendon Watford is still in the NBA. Who am I missing? Javonte Smart got a cup of coffee. That was the original Mr. Big, I'll just say it, Mr. Big Ass Offer, okay? Javonte Smart, Trendon Watford, I said, Tremont Waters, Connecticut native, CT stand up, baby. He was in the league for a minute. Naz Reid is obviously playing phenomenally. So I just bring it up. Will Wade has a track record of putting guys into the pros. And so I think this is a perfect landing spot for PJ Haggerty. I think it's going to happen. Maybe he stays in the draft, but to me, it doesn't really make sense. And I think once he comes back, that's probably the spot that makes the most sense.